Welcome to Manawaker Studios Flash Fiction Podcast. I'm CB Drogi. This week, Split by Caroline Tiuseco. It was a starless night. Mika ran across the woods, feeling the cold wind bite at her naked body. Stumbling through the dark, she paid no heed to the muddy trail, the distant rumbling of thunder, or the uncertainty of the void before her. All she knew was the dull ache in her belly, accompanied by a horrific discovery. Mika kept running, barely slowing down her frenzied pace when she reached the bottom of a cliff. Feeling her fingers across the jagged surface, she made her way across the rock face until she reached an entrance. It couldn't have been larger than a crack, to a small cave. Mika wasted no time in squeezing herself between the sharp edges, which cut and scraped her skin. The awkward space forced Mika to sit hunched over. She hugged her knees and shivered as she heard people shouting from afar. As the muffled voices grew nearer, Mika bit her lip to keep herself from whimpering.
Look over there!
Where that thing gone?
It's crazy!
It's gotten away from us. Monster!
Mika felt her throat tighten as bile threatened to rise up to her mouth. How did things end up this way, she thought. Flashes of memory played out in her head of a time spent strapped on a table with the sting of chemicals in her nose and eyes. She vaguely recalled a blinding light. It was burned into the back of her mind. She remembered empty promises of a better future, false hope served on silver platters and fed to her by the mouthful.
Look, something's here.
The ache in her stomach turned into a sharp pain which began to throb. Squirming at her place, Mika clutched her waist. She could imagine herself busting open any moment now, spilling warm blood and guts in that little space. At any rate, she hoped they would never find her and watch the result of their lies play out before them. At the very least, she would strive to deny them that satisfaction. She could picture their smug faces and rotten grins, how they would howl or cackle or shout at her. Their faces would turn swollen and red as all the blood in their body would course straight to their heads. She would grab each one and rip them off, rolling them down the cliff. She doesn't want their heads dirty and nasty. No, she wants something else, something warmer and softer. Lightning struck, the thunder deafening, the rain unforgiving. Oh, dear God! A man screamed as he held up his light and watched blood flow out from the cave, swirling about with mud and rainwater. Mika slipped out from between the rocks with newfound ease. With her head bowed, she tucked a long strand of hair behind her ear. They watched her lips spread into a wide grin and her eyes look at them with an intense predatory hunger. A loud snap echoed in the night, almost like the crackling in the sky. They stood paralyzed as Mika clawed at the skin around her waist, ripping herself apart in seconds. The torn flesh moved with a life of its own, clinging to her back and forming bat-like wings. She opened her mouth, revealing a thin, elongated tongue that stretched all the way to her chest. She lunged at the nearest person in front of her, leaving the lower half of herself standing under the rain. In the end, nobody really had the time or luxury to celebrate the fruits of their labor. They were devoured by it. This has been Split, written by Caroline Tiuseco. Flash Fiction Podcast is supported by Manawaker Studios patrons on Patreon, the voluntary pay-what-you-want subscription service. Patrons get perks like access to patron-only stories and behind-the-scenes info. Higher tiers grant a subscription to Manawaker books, or even an honorary title within the studio. You can become a patron for only $1 a month, and every patron is greatly appreciated. For more information, visit patreon.com/Manawaker. For more information about Manawaker Studios' other projects, including books and games, visit manawaker.com, which is also where you should go to learn more about the authors featured on this podcast, or to get details about submitting a story. The Flash Fiction Podcast theme song is by Kevin MacLeod. Manawaker Studios' director of DICE is Ben Baston. I'm CB Drogi. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at CBDROEGE. Thanks for listening.